Well, hello everybody. Thanks again for pivoting with us in this time. We always hope that social media works the way we want it to, but unfortunately, I don't have the big bucks to make them do what I want them to do. So here we are having this great conversation today. And my hope with this, when we talked about it earlier this week or maybe yesterday, there's been so much going on. Um, I really wanted this to feel like four friends hanging out at a cafe or pub and feel like we can have an open conversation, um, you know, bit of a catch up, and just seeing where everybody's at, but also maybe having some of these deeper conversations that I know the rest of the country's having. I've been asked numerous times over the last couple of days, what do we do? There's a lot of things happening in our country. And obviously all of this is in regards to the grave site, the mass grave site that was found in Kamloops, where they realized and have uncovered that there's at least 215 children buried at a mass grave site at an Indian residential school. Um, and so we're going to get there in a second. But for those of you tuning in and watching this, I wanted to introduce my friends to you guys. Some people that I greatly admire that I think would be, be very valuable for our conversation today. So let me start by introducing my buddy, Alan Greyeyes. If it's okay, I'll throw it to you first. If you just want to share a little bit about who you are and what you do, I think that'd be good for people to kind of get a context of my buddy, Alan.
Sure, yeah, thanks, Don. My name's Alan Greyeyes. I'm the festival director for the Sakahiwe Festival. We're a small organization based in Winnipeg, and we take music to low-income neighborhoods or divested neighborhoods throughout the city, and in an effort just to provide access to the arts, because a lot of these families don't have the same resources that others do, and I think also cultural isolation plays a role in it. And so yeah, that's what I do. I also do some artist management and project management, and currently working with Northern Cree and an up-and-coming singer-songwriter named Kaylee Watts.
Thanks, buddy. And Alan is a longtime supporter of Don Amero. He and I have been good buddies for a long time, pretty much since my whole journey through the music world. He's been a guy that I've seen as a real leader and strength and source of many good moments together. And maybe there's a little bit of Grand Marnier here and there.
Well, I've lived through multiple Don Amero haircuts. Let's just say that.
That's true. Yeah, you've seen many facets of this hair.
Yeah.
I'm going to introduce you now to my friend Sarah Burke. Sarah Burks with SiriusXM, and she does a multitude of great things for the music community and particularly the Indigenous community as well. And so, Sarah, I just wanted to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself to the folks as well.
So I oversee our Canadian music department at SiriusXM, and I actually, when I first started, was programming the Indigenous channel, and I recognized that was a problem as a white girl. But we've just expanded our team, so we have a brand new Indigenous channel called the Indigiverse, and it's honestly very exciting to have Kim Wheeler and Kaylin Beller join our team. They're both from the Winnipeg, Manitoba area, and it's been really exciting few weeks working with them.
That's awesome. And you host Women in Music podcast, don't you? Women in Media.
Thank you. Yes. So I guess another piece of that puzzle is, making sure that the conversations that I feel like I can hold some space to host include Indigenous folk as well. So I had Kaylee Cardinal actually on my podcast a few weeks ago, chatting with Iskway next week. And I want to make sure that these women are also included for sure.
That's awesome. I love the work that you're doing.
Thank you.
Meg Patrick and I, we go back a ways, connected through the country music community. Meg, you're down in Nashville, am I right?
I am, yeah. I actually was just back in Canada, visiting family after like a year and a half. Pretty stark contrast with how locked down things are still. It's tough to see my family and friends still kind of dealing with that. All of you guys, man, it's tough, but it was good to see my family though. So.
Yeah. Meg, you are you've been in the music community now for how long? Like how long have you been at this?
Well, I mean, in terms of like having a record deal, I think it's been 6 years since I signed my record deal. But I mean, I was always playing in bands and in music well beyond that. But in this industry officially, yeah, I guess about 6 years or so.
Cool. And obviously you're tearing it up. I love obviously seeing what you're doing, and the Canadian country music community is benefiting greatly by the work that you're doing, and really just kicking butt as a female country singer, just doing really well here. So honored to have you part of this conversation, and honored to have Alan and Sarah here as well, and all of you tuning in, whether you're here live or checking this out a little later. This is a I want to say it's a tough time in our country. I don't know any other words to say it. I don't even know where to begin. I didn't have an agenda necessarily. I think I wanted to just sort of open it up to sort of a space where we can have conversation of what's rolling around in your head. I know for me, there's been a lot of talk this week around a lot of things. By the way, I was mentioning a second ago on Instagram is that as of right now, like literally 1 o'clock, we are putting an offer in on a home down the street. So we're in the middle of a mortgage thing as we speak. On top of that, obviously the weight of the conversation happening, I've put myself out there in a way that's I've always been one of the guys that, Alan Greyeyes gave me this great line a couple of years ago, is to be an amplifier of Indigenous thought and ideas. And that's something I've been doing for a long time. And Alan's really helped me sort through some of that sometimes. And for me, I've been doing this work, I feel, for a long time. I know Alan and many people are doing this great work to do that. And so for me, when this week came about, I felt like, okay, here's this wave coming. And I've gotten message of people saying, oh, Don, you don't have to carry this on your shoulders. And I said, I know what you're saying, but I feel like I've already been doing this. And now everybody's ears are perked up listening a little bit more. And I feel like this is an opportunity to, we talked about, are we capitalizing on a negative thing? And I said, no, I think what we're doing is really sort of, we've got an opportunity here to really, while people are listening and paying attention, to really use this as a moment. And I hope it's more than a moment. I hope it's a real tidal shift in our country. And so I'm in the midst of that. Also, today is the Winnipeg Jets versus Montreal game. It's a big playoff game. Sorry, Sarah. Sorry, Sarah's from Toronto, and she had.
I'm done crying. I'm fine. Thank you.
And so I haven't shared this publicly yet, but they've asked me to sing the anthem tonight.
Oh, that's awesome.
And
Congrats,
I'll be there singing, which again, I know I'm taking up a lot of space here to be in front of this conversation, but I know I want to open it up. But that was hard to come to that conclusion, whether to sing or not. So my friend Mark Chipman of the Winnipeg Jets called and said, would you like to do this? I said, absolutely. 24 hours later, I said, I'm not sure. And then 24 hours later, I said, okay, I think I'm going to do this. It's been a real internal struggle because trying to figure out, I know a lot of people are saying, what does Canada even mean now, right? Because this is really, it's shaking our foundations. And when you think of the anthem, it's a foundational thing. And through many conversations and many, back and forths between myself and the Jets, and I know, Alan, you and I talked even the other day, it feels like if we do this in the proper way, this is a really big moment and a moment where we can create more unity rather than divisive. And so that's my heart in approaching this tonight. And I hope that it comes across in a way that feels like unity and not separating. So
if I can jump in for a sec, what you just said. So Meg just had the exact same reaction that I had when you told me that, right? And that's our automatic is like, we're cheering on our bud, like, yes, this is amazing. Maybe you can walk us through what goes on in your head about the anthem, like get into that.
Yeah, my first thought, like, oh, my friend who is a singer has this like huge opportunity. This is awesome for him. But that's the thing, is it's not an automatic reaction for us to consider what the other implications are and the other parts of that situation.
Right. Well, I mean, a big thing, right, is when and Alan, you might have some really clear thoughts on this that would help me sort through this in a way. But here's my perspective is, when you think of colonialism and sort of the Indigenous perspective, and how they view where we started as a country, and the idea of God keep our land, right? That was a line that George Strombolopoulos posted the other day saying about the Toronto-Montreal game. How do you have the moment of silence and then say God keep our land, knowing full well that these residential schools were run by the church? And I got my head around it because I believe, my thoughts are that God creator didn't do this. It was human fault, human error, human tragedy, human hate that did this, not God hate. And so for me, I can sink my heart and my mind and soul into that and feel good about that. All the while, there is still struggle with even the other lyrics. But I think people have to see the way that we're going to do the anthem tonight, because I think that's it's changing maybe the way people will listen to the anthem tonight as well. So it'll be different. I can say that it'll be different tonight.
Okay.
Any thoughts on it, Alan? Any thoughts on that, the anthem, and why that could be why it's a point of contention for Indigenous people?
Yeah. Like I also want to just backtrack and say that that line that I gave you about being an amplifier, I gave that exact same line to Isque, and I was just chatting with her in the chat here. I see she's watching us, so I just wanted to point that out. I don't only save all these great pieces of wisdom for you, Don. I share them with everyone else. But
well,
yeah.
But I'm wiser, according to my hair.
But when it comes to hockey, I think, like I mentioned to you, that hockey is one of the only professional sports that's still dominated by white athletes. And for those reasons, I think their audience is predominantly white. And so that gives us an opportunity to reach thousands of people on any given game. And it doesn't necessarily need to be Don Romero saying these thought-provoking words. It's just the fact that Don Romero's out there doing great. And they're going to see that, maybe Indigenous people do have a lot to offer. Maybe they are just as talented and special as our loved ones are. And I think that goes a long way. I think the more diverse we are, the safer we are. And you're playing a big role in that, Don, by singing the anthem.
That's super cool, man.
Can I ask a question, Don?
Yeah.
Have you been invited to do the anthem before?
Yes. Yeah. This will be my fourth time with Winnipeg. And so, Alan, would you mind sharing, the other day you posted this, because I called you right away, Alan, and I said, here's this opportunity. What are your thoughts? And you said something about the Jets organization that I thought was really, really profound. I shared it with the Jets organization, whether you like that or not. I shared it with them because I thought they really need to know how some people are perceiving them as an organization. Would you mind sharing that piece?
Yeah, well? Sure. I see them going, like, I often look at the land acknowledgements as the first step. And obviously actions speak louder than words. And the Winnipeg Jets have moved beyond that first step. They include the land acknowledgement, but they're also doing a lot of programming and outreach in the community. I know that Kevin Chief is involved in their organization now too. And so again, it's using that platform, recognizing that their audience isn't the most diverse, and there are systemic barriers for people of color to actually compete at that level. And they can make a difference. They can definitely make the world a better place by educating their audience and people who love hockey.
Mm-hmm.
That's valuable.
That's all I had, Don Romero. That was it.
No, I think that's great, because what you're saying is that, like, and in my talks with them, and they as an organization are doing the tough work already. They are answering the calls, the 94 calls to action, and put forth by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. I think they're already there. They admit that there's lots of work to do, but I think that they're doing this stuff that I would say no other team is doing it quite the same, I would imagine.
I'd say Edmonton, but also their fan base kind of took shots at Ethan Bear for all of his turnovers. And the guy's young, he's going to make mistakes, but the fact that he's Indigenous doesn't make him like predisposed to making more mistakes than others.
Right.
And
exactly.
So, but yeah, I see like working with Northern Cree, they love Edmonton Oilers. They'll get up there and sing in front of the arena before games. Like that's their team. But I think like our Indigenous jerseys look incredible.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's going a long way, and not only actions, but also making contributions to the Winnipeg Aboriginal Sports Achievement Center, I believe it's called. One of the organizations Kevin's also involved in. And so again, it's, for me, land acknowledgements are always like a first step, and definitely need to be done in repetition alongside the national anthem. But it's your actions that speak louder than words. And so you definitely need to take those second and third and fourth steps. I also wanted to say, like, you mentioned the calls to action. There's only like one or two of the calls to action that actually talks about the arts. and
Yeah.
talks about the impact that we can have as industry folks, as performing artists on stages in front of thousands of people. We have a larger role to play in this. And like I said, every stage, not only every hockey game, but every stage, every concert stage, every festival stage gives us an opportunity to educate thousands of people and to challenge stereotypes and introduce the idea that we're not all the same. And again, the end goal is to move us from numbers and stereotypes into the realm of real people with humanity. And again, just as special and unique as Canadians' loved ones.
Mm. I think that's an important thing to mention too. When you say, you know, we talk about the 94 calls to action, I think the average person goes, I can't do 94 things. Like, what do I got to do? But this 94 calls to action is an implementation for the whole country, right? It's like, it's not just individual. I think every individual should read it, understand it. What do you think about do you think it's a valuable resource for people to dive into it's a bit of it's not a long read, but the United Nations United Nations Declaration of Independence of Indigenous Peoples. Do you think that's a really good resource for people to understand as well? Or is there something else you would point people towards?
It's definitely a good introduction. The hard part is wrapping your brain around the fact that, you know, the laws of the land were created by people, and they weren't, it's not like divine or anything like that. These were systems created by people. Oftentimes bureaucracies are designed to protect people from the consequences from their actions too. And so a bureaucracy includes policy and structures and laws and stuff like that. And so again, knowing that they were created by people helps you understand that you know, there was Indigenous laws and philosophy and sciences before Canada existed. And I think the UNDRIP states that, is that, you know, we were just as organized and structured ahead of time. And even though the history books and the laws would tell you otherwise, it's important to know that. So it's a good introduction, but again, it's just about having these conversations on a regular basis,
right?
And not relying on. I also want to say I don't want everyone to rely on the our news cycle to trigger how we feel about these issues and when we take action. I think we need to take action on a regular basis and continue to educate ourselves and continue to have these conversations.
Yeah. By the way, Lori has actually shared in the chat if anyone wants to check out the calls to action, the documents right there.
Yeah, thanks, Lori. So you can see why I invited Alan on this, because he's a wealth of knowledge and has clearly thought through a lot of this stuff better than I have. I feel most of the time I'm trying to be aware of what's happening and educate myself even in all of this too. And can I ask you guys what you think of like flags at half masts and orange shirts? And you know, I can talk more about the shoes on the front steps, because I think that was something that was well, I'm not sure if we started it, but it's happening now here and there, and I've gotten a lot of people sort of following suit. So just curious what you guys think of those kinds of things.
Meg, you can go ahead. I'll wait for you. She might be. Is she muted?
I think she's frozen and muted.
Okay, so I'll speak for a second here if you want.
Frozen mid laugh and muted.
At least it's a nice frozen picture. It's not always nice, right?
Whoa.
She's back.
She's
okay.
back.
Hooray.
Wait, can you guys hear me, see me?
Yeah.
It's catching up right now. Yeah.
Sorry, my Zoom, it like booted me out, and so I had to come back in, and it keeps freezing on me. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on with our internet. I forgot what I was even going to say. Go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
Okay. So, you know, like, here's just a thought that I had earlier this week. You know, I think it was the Raptors that I saw someone share that they had put their, you know, their flags down in, was it in Florida at half mast, or was it somewhere else? I don't remember what was in the post, but, you know, to me, an organization like the Raptors, early jumping on that and taking action, I think sets a bar. And I think that's an important bar. But even still, with what Alan was saying about making sure it's not just a moment and triggered by the news cycle. So in a lot of the work that I've been doing over the last 3 years at SiriusXM, I definitely was thinking in news cycle and by moment case basis at that time when I began working with that channel. But because I think the participating in any of these initiatives, what it does is it helps educate you and share how open you are to learning. And it opens a door for conversation when you participate in these things. And it shows solidarity. So I think all of those things are good. The problem is, though, that it can't go away after you participate. It has to be continuous, and it has to be, flags will go back to their original position, right? And orange shirts, like, we see things even for, I think it's a pink shirt bullying day. There's one across Canada. So we need to make sure that we're not just doing these things one day of the year is my biggest concern when we participate. Although I think spreading the word is so important. And that's why it's great when anyone wants to show their support and solidarity. Meg, are you on the same sort of page?
Yeah, well, I just was going to say, I think from my perspective, I mean, first of all, when all this came out in the news, I said this, I posted about it yesterday. I was ashamed that I really was largely ignorant to a lot of this stuff. I mean, and and some of that is on me, but a lot of that is on our educational system. I mean, we did entire units on the Holocaust and.
Oh, poor girl. Keeps happening.
Yeah. It's funny, even I'm seeing like in some of what my
wars.
Oh, are we back?
Oh, sorry. Are we lagging? I'm so sorry, guys. Can you hear me right
now? You're back. You're back.
Oh, I'm back. Okay. Sorry. What I was saying is this information was not given to and it is such a huge, massive part of our history in Canada. And it's not even history. It's still happening right now. And, and I have so much more of an understanding of the current issues that are happening for Indigenous people, knowing this other information about these schools and everything. And
we got to tell Mitchell to stop playing video games. I think
he's
what's going on here.
Video games.
Yeah.
No, but she's making a great point in that, like, we weren't taught these things in school. No, I definitely weren't.
Think it's like what's going on.
Yeah, and I remember this is probably Don Romero probably is before my time, but we only had like one color that was called skin color, and it definitely didn't look like me. I'm sure Don. I don't know if you had colored crayons back then, Don.
Dude, it's so interesting that you're bringing this up. No, back then we didn't have colored crayons. No, we just had sand. We had to color in the sand. Stupid joke. Just yesterday, my daughter was on my shoulders and we were walking home, and she said, "Okay, you can put me down at that brown house, that skin colored house." I thought that, oh man, I thought that was so cool. I love that she said that.
Yeah. But again, back to my point about diversity, I think it's important that we introduce multiple skin colors, and especially for Indigenous people, for everyone to know that I'm dark, but Don's not as dark as me. We're still Indigenous, and so Indigenous people are also blonde hair and blue eyed, and like I said, the more diverse we are, the more people see us in our differences, all of our differences, and realize we're just as unique as their loved ones. I think the safer we are.
Yeah, for sure. Meg, I heard what you were saying. I'm not sure if it's just you're working on the. So I made a joke the other day when Brett Kissels wasn't working. I said, "Are you on the Edmonton Oilers Wi-Fi?" And then before the series, I messaged Brett and I was like, literally before game one, I was like, "Hey, your Oilers couldn't grease a training wheel. Never mind my Jets."
Oh. Oh my goodness.
So he loved that. So Meg, I'm sorry that you're having some technical issues there, and if it's just the nature of where we're at today. So I apologize that we're having trouble getting you here. So a couple thoughts come into my mind with all this talking, and when you talked about sort of the flags being at half mast, Sarah, and the idea of like the problem right now is that it can become trendy to want to be part of this, right? And become trendy to want to like, well, I'm going to say something because everybody's saying something, and it's the I don't know if cool things to do is the right way to say it, but like people are going to say stuff and be part of it, and I think there's going to be a majority of people. There's going to be some people who really mean it, and there's going to be some are saying it because it's rhetoric, right? And so Brett asked me, he said, you know, how do people know whether it's true? How do people know that I'm not just jumping on a bandwagon? And I said, what happens is I call you in 6 months or a year from now, and I say, what are you doing? Right? It's not about this wave that everybody's supposed to respond right now. We have to say something. Now is not the time to be silent. You know, I think it's important to have moments of reflection and don't say anything at a knee-jerk reaction. I think there's importance to absorbing really what's going on. And I made a statement the other day in email to the CCMA organization. I sit on I'm the chair of the EDI committee there, so equity, diversity, and inclusion. And I said I'm disappointed that the country community hasn't said anything, or just the music community in general. And I feel like when it first happened, it seemed to me I was noticing it happening a lot on Indigenous channels and not non-Indigenous communities. And so I voiced that, but I also realized that, you know, Indigenous people have been wrestling with this for generations. I feel like the uncovering of 215 children is waking up the nation to now start wrestling with it. And I think that's a bit of it's a problem because Indigenous people have been claiming these things for a long time. And now everybody's like going, oh, it's real, you know? And I think that's a bit of the heartbreak, I would say, on behalf of Indigenous people, is that people are going, oh, we're shocked. And I've heard this said, Indigenous people aren't shocked. They're heartbroken, no less, but not shocked. So 6 months from now, that's when people will know whether this was just a trend or not.
And I think we have to be really respectful too of the time that an Indigenous person would need to process how they want to speak or handle their conversation surrounding this Indigenous story, right? A lot of Indigenous folks that I work with speak about how it's not their responsibility to educate others on this stuff, although a lot of them really want to and want to take part in those conversations. You know, someone like me shouldn't feel entitled to have someone explain it to me when I can dive in myself and do learning and research myself. You can maybe ask for advice on things. And I know, Don, I think when we first talked the other day, you said, you know, I'm getting all these calls right now. And
right.
That's a hard thing to deal with, especially because, like you said, we're trying to acknowledge that this has been here the whole time. It's not just happening right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And so my friend Kelly reached out to me this morning and she said, Don, you don't have to shoulder this. And I just said, I feel like now is the time for me personally, and I can't for everybody else. And she's right. I can't shoulder everything. I can't fix all the problems. And you know, and me kind of like putting myself out there in this way and trying to like take the weight of all this. I don't think that I am, but I feel like what I'm wanting to do is dig in for those kids. I'm wanting to dig in for those residential school survivors. I'm wanting to dig in for the entire community because it's not a massive platform, but I have a platform where I know people are listening, and I've built up an audience around me that I think really is attuned to me and what I think is important. And I think that's why I'm digging in, you know, and I think that's why I want to put the sweat and the tears and, you know, what it takes to really take advantage of this moment while people are really listening and not let it pass by, you know, because we also know tomorrow, 2 days from now, 10 days from now, something else is going to happen. There's more, the world keeps spinning. And, you know, another friend of mine said, can I post something that has nothing to do with that? And I said, the world's going to keep turning, and we need to continue to move forward and celebrate life and living. And, you know, I do think pause and reflect is important, but I think there's other stuff still going to keep going on, you know? And I said that tonight, like there's a hockey game to be had, you know? But I think how we go into it is really a big moment. So that's all part of this.
And like you said, you can flip that too. Sorry, Megan.
No, you're good. You're good.
I think we can flip what you're saying too, like before the pause. And that's where if you want to post about hockey, that's cool, even on a day like this, as long as you're bringing the other conversations into your other everyday posts. That's sort of the flip side of the coin, instead of it being the one day.
Right. Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to say, and sorry guys, I've now switched to my phone and using like my cell phone service. It's really stormy here, so I don't know if it's like affecting the Wi-Fi. But you know, what I wanted to say to you, Don, is how much I appreciate you putting this together and you know, having me be a part of it, because as much as you're absolutely right, you don't need to shoulder this and it isn't your responsibility. I do feel very lucky to know you and to be able to have this conversation with you, because at the end of the day, and I spent pretty much most of yesterday reading. I read through the calls to action. I watched some documentaries and just tried to research some different foundations and as much stuff as I could on my own. But there is no replacement for person-to-person conversation and being able to ask you your questions and visibly see your emotions and how you feel about things, and hearing it from you personally as another human being that I know as a human being who has this experience firsthand, and that's pretty invaluable. And I'm just really grateful for you to be open to that, because I know that it's helpful for me and it'll help me continue to share that with my platform and the people that I know. So I just wanted to thank you for this opportunity, and all of you, Alan, you as well. I know we haven't met in person yet, but just hearing you speak has already been just really informative and helpful for me as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I also want to note, like, I got off a call yesterday with Doug Cox, who's starting a little group or an organization that's gonna help non-Indigenous artists understand like what they can do to help. And one of the first steps, I believe, just through our conversation, I think it was about 30 minutes yesterday, we talked about like having guest speakers come and educate some of the musicians who are on board. And again, I believe like every stage gives us an opportunity to amplify or every stage gives us an opportunity to educate Canadians and Americans, because this is part of their legacy as well, the destruction of Indigenous families.
I wanted to ask you guys too, because in my research yesterday, I saw that there is like a free course through, I think it's University in Alberta. It's
in the chat right now.
Oh, is it? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Someone's linked it there if you want to check it out. Yeah.
Yeah, I did go to the page yesterday, and I was thinking about enrolling in that, and I just wanted to ask you guys if you think that's a good resource or a good situation for me to look at, or if you have anything you think might be better. I just want to I just want to make sure I'm getting the best information.
It sounds like a great first start or first step. Definitely, if you have the time, I think it'd be great. I think the process is ongoing. You definitely have to continue to invest time and energy and emotional energy as well in learning these things, and then being able to boil them down to like meme kind of speaking points that your audiences are gonna be able to understand and carry with them as well. I think that's the key, is moving past some of the buzz terms we're going to see or hear, moving past, like, you know, even I'm in conversations and meetings and I say residential schools and I see people's like faces glaze over, because we've talked about this a number of times, but I mean, there's still a long way to go. And so I think, again, it's about understanding it, boiling it down to something that you can share with others, and so that they can be just as inspired as you are.
I have another question too, because I think the future generations are such a big part of how we handle this moving forward. So Don, you have kids. Alan, I'm not sure if you have kids, but how do we have these conversations with the young settlers of Canada?
Yes, it is.
And again, that's a part of the hockey world too. Like, my son's an elite hockey player, and there's been multiple teams where he's even an assistant captain, one of the leading scorers, and he's subjected to racist comments from his teammates. And so it's a process. Like, I'm privileged enough to be able to articulate my points well and to explain things to others. I fear for the parents who don't have that kind of education or that ability to, you know, say what's on their mind and boil it down to really easy to understand points, because racism is very complicated and it's hard to understand. Oftentimes it's quite it's the microaggressions. And the microaggressions are hard to identify, they're hard to police, but we know how they make us feel, and the people that are making them know how they make us feel as well. And so, yeah, it's hard, but it is a process of us as parents teaching each other and being willing to spend some time. Like that's one of the things. Like I'll even text Don, and I've had chats about text messages about parenting and what we've done in our home, and because my kids are 9, 10, and 20, so we're a lot longer along the way than Don is. But yeah, I think it's just opening up and moving past those destructive cycles, because as an Indigenous person, an Indigenous parent, we have grandparents, we have parents who who never knew how to be parents. And that's the key, that's the main destructive part of residential schools is they destroyed our families. They took kids away from their parents. And so those kids never learned how to be parents. And so when they became our parents, some of those destructive cycles continued, some of the abuse, some of the trauma continued, and it's our job to break those cycles. And it's a lot of work.
Well, and I was gonna bring that up. Like I've been saying this for the last couple of days. Like I don't think everybody considers generational trauma when this story comes up. They're not. People often go, "Well, you didn't go to residential school. Why are you? You weren't part of that. Whatever was going on then. You were born 25 years ago." But the thing that I recognize is that generational trauma is a very serious thing. What's the opposite side of that? Like last night we talked about generational wealth, right? Yeah, exactly.
Or generational justice.
Yeah, and benefit, right? Yeah. And that's all part of it. And I think when you really do the deep dive and look at all that stuff, you can kind of see why there's this chasm that exists, right? And sometimes and kind of not understand why that person is like that and I'm like this, and I think you have to really weigh out all that stuff because it's why we are the way that we are today, right? All that stuff leads into who we are now.
There's a great quote, Ta-Nehisi Coates in Between the World and Me, and that's my favorite book ever. I've listened to it about 10 times. He says, in summarizing black on black crime and the media's willingness to put that front and center oftentimes, he said, you can't shoot a man and then blame him for bleeding. And I saw William quoted that because it's one of the things I shared with William about a couple months ago. But it summarizes that our grandparents, our parents were shot, and all this trauma is them bleeding. And the Canadian government continues, and the Health and Family Services, they continue to point fingers at us, and the history books point fingers at us. But again, our parents, our grandparents were shot, and we can't blame them for feeling the effects.
That's so true. There's so much weight to this conversation. I like what you said a second ago, Alan, when you said that it's your favorite book. You've listened to it about 10 times. I always think it's funny to hear people, I listened to this book. My favorite book is The Office. So I don't know if that is the same. But
well, I think that's another key thing is I like looking at the systems that we're in and the classrooms. Not a lot of Indigenous people thrive in classrooms. And when you're forcing people, and I believe that classrooms are based on the Industrial Revolution and the assembly line, and the idea that you put people in at the start and everyone goes through the same process and comes out exactly the same at the end. Unfortunately, everyone has different learning styles. Myself, I learn through listening. So if I hear things, I can remember it. I'm not very fast at reading things and absorbing them. But again, when we force people to sit through things, and expect them to soak it in as everyone else would, then we're setting people up for failure. We're setting up a large portion of the population up for failure, and for a lot of Indigenous people who, like myself, often learn through listening or learn through experience, that system doesn't work for us. And I wanted to touch on one more thing is that I struggle with the fact that my little festival, we replicate the classrooms with the presentation of music. So when we set up a concert stage or a festival stage where it's one group of people on stage, one group of people sitting quietly and forced to listen, then we're replicating that classroom, which is hard for a lot of people to succeed in. And a more participatory model is the powwows that are set up in a lot of First Nation communities, where you're free to walk around the arbor, you're free to dance in intertribal, and you're free to stand next to the drums that your favorite performers. And so there's a lot more freedom and participation. And like I said, it boils down to everyone's different. We all have different learning styles, and these systems have been set up to for certain people to succeed and a lot more people to fail.
Hey, Alan, Dana just asked what the title of the book was that you referenced.
Oh, it's Between the World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates.
Okay.
And the audiobook is read by the author, which makes it even better.
Oh, beautiful.
Maybe we can get a list if someone could share a link in the, yeah.
I had a talk with you, Alan, about my son and how he's struggling with school. I mean, a lot of kids are struggling because of, homeschooling things and lockdown and all that stuff. But I remember you telling me that the school system is hard for a lot of kids. And I think my son especially struggles with that because he is an active learner. He wants to be moving and jumping around and doing all that kind of stuff. Yeah. I wanted to bring something up. I know we've been going for a while here, but I also want to make sure we get all the thoughts out. We're in some of what we're talking here is this thirst for knowledge, and I feel like what's happening right now, while we've got people's ears, is this idea of like people hear these stories of this trauma and stuff, and I think a quote I heard a couple of years ago in a empathic listening course I took was the quote was, allow yourself to be changed by what you're listen so deeply that you allow yourself to be changed by what you hear. And I think that's really what I think needs to be happening right now. Is I'm hoping that those in the country who are waking to this idea of our history and where we're at, and the potential for us to move forward is in the knowledge. It's in the understanding of what's happened. And I think we really need to do the hard work. We've been wanting to do it we've been calling for it. And I think finally now, I think people are wanting to absorb that, and really kind of find ways to grow through that listening.
Although we have to do so much acknowledging, I think there's part of this too, that we need to find ways to celebrate Indigenous cultural traditions as well. Like not, participating inappropriately, but making sure that we give the space to, I mean, every Canadian has their own traditions, right? You think about it, but Indigenous communities have deep rooted traditions that are a lot of them based on the land and preserving the earth. And these things play into a whole other conversation of like, why haven't we been acknowledging those things too and celebrating those things too?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Because I've in the last few years, like the stuff that I have learned, it should not always be about trauma is what I've learned. We have to acknowledge it, but we have to find ways to celebrate the beautiful things from Indigenous communities too.
Yeah, I think that speaks to my desire to see more diversity, and for us to use all of our stages and events to show Canadians that we're just as special and unique as their loved ones. But I think like there was one other book that I remember, and I gave it to Iskway actually. It's called Accounting for Genocide. And the basic premise was that acts of violence against Indigenous people became easy when we were reduced to numbers. When we were reduced to like, there's 500 people in this community, there's 3,000 people in this community. And so the bureaucrats were able to just say, you know what? They don't see the faces. They don't see the fact that this young girl doesn't like to eat meat, or this boy is allergic to fish, or this person, has other hopes and dreams. They don't see those things. They just see that they're one of 500 people or one of 3,000 people. And so like, since they're so disconnected, it becomes easy to like limit their rations, limit the amount of support, limit the education that they get and their access to clean water. And so again, it's Desiree's pointing it out here in the chat too, but it opened my eyes to how we were first stripped of our humanity, and when the acts of violence started against Indigenous people in North America.
I think the hard part that's always so hard is changing the individual psyche, like so that every individual feels like they have a responsibility in this. Like I think I know one of the conversations is like, well, they get all this money from the government and they put these programs in place. Why are they still complaining? Why are they still upset? And it's just like, well, because of your attitude, right? Because people still feel like, well, you can't you know, if somebody is shot, you throw money at them and give them a program, that wound's still there. That they're still bleeding, you know?
Yeah, I
And I think
remember
that,
I was in a meeting with Dr. Marsha Anderson, and she said you can't project your way or program your way out of generational problems like this.
yeah,
It's a lot more than a $100,000 grant or a $5,000 or $5 million budget for reparations. It's it's generational work for generational traumas and generational injustices.
right. And so that's why I say it's like I think this kind of work is about helping the individual who goes, I don't know what's my place in this, and I hope these kinds of moments like that we're having right now cause somebody to change the way that they think and really consider all of this stuff, you know, when you're having conversation with somebody that's different than you.
Something that I say a lot that like you've just kind of opened my own brain to. I always say I can't even imagine how you feel when I'm talking about a conversation like this.
Yeah.
And sure, that's part of acknowledging, but I should imagine how it feels. Right?
Yeah.
I think that, yeah, the empathy is very important and the sympathy is very important. And then the next step is action. And so like you've been a part of an incredible movement at SiriusXM, which is translated into tens of thousands of dollars in royalty payments for Indigenous creators across the country. And during the pandemic, that was extremely important. That's how people survived during this last year and a half. That's how people paid their bills and mortgages. And so just the fact that you're playing them on SiriusXM goes above and beyond taking a course. And that's what I want to encourage people to do, is continue to use any power that they have to, make things better and make the world a better place. And I'm a firm believer that that's our job as the arts, is to make the world a better place.
Yeah. Amen to that. Hey, listen, guys, I want to be super respectful of your time. We're all busy. I might be buying a house today. I'm not sure. I haven't gotten word yet. So, and I got a Jets game to get ready for. But before we go, I got one last thought I want to share. But I also want to, does anybody have anything else they want to share or questions that I want to make sure that we try to tackle? I'm available anytime. Well, not anytime, but to chat as well. So I'm always open for conversations. So.
I think it'd be cool to do another one of these and talk about how, the last few weeks or whatever has gone, because that's part of action too, is following up.
Of course. Yeah.
Yeah. And then just, again, continue to use your stages to educate Canadians and to challenge stereotypes and to encourage people to do more work.
Yeah, I think for me, I've got a list of books and some resources and lots to dig into and actually the time to do it, because we're still not really playing shows and COVID. So, I think for me, I would definitely love to come back and revisit some of these conversations, because I think I'll be able to ask better questions and have a bigger scope of the action that we can take and how we can keep, stick to this. And as you said, not just make it a moment, but make it a practice and something that we continue to do. This has been so forefront of my mind, and I want to make sure that it doesn't just kind of fade out. So I think that consistency will be really helpful for everybody, and especially for me as well.
Right. I not to throw my buddy Brett Kissel under the bus, but he finished our conversation yesterday by saying, I want to help you. I want to help your community, and all really good, pure-hearted stuff. And I believe that. But I said, in an attempt to educate, I suppose, I said maybe change the wording, because that feels like you and me as opposed to saying us. And I said, this is our community, brother. This is for all of us. When Indigenous people do well, we all do well. And I think that's and anybody from the BIPOC community and all Canadians, and I think that's my mindset. So I'm hoping that this continues to become more of an us story and not Indigenous Canadians and non-Indigenous Canadians.
You could say the same thing about music. Like, let's play, I really pride myself and my team on making sure that we consider Indigenous artists on other channels as well, you know? And for instance, Don, you play alongside Meg Patrick on CBC Country, and there are several other Indigenous artists that do, you know? It shouldn't be just on an Indigenous channel or an Indigenous stage.
Yeah, and like I said, those royalties from SiriusXM are making it possible for Indigenous artists to invest in their art and improve their art. And so they're able to compete not only across Canada, but internationally now. And so, again, thanks so much to SiriusXM and Jeff and your team over there, because it's made a big impact.
I can attest to that, because that's definitely been the case for me, for sure. Yeah. Well, thanks you guys, Meg, Alan, Sarah. I really appreciate you guys taking some time today. I know we're all super busy folks. Thanks everybody out there for listening in. You know, I'm looking forward to having more of these kinds of conversations in the future. And I can't wait to see you all face to face and give you a big hug once we're
Don, thank you for having an open heart for all of this, because, you know, I think I will echo what a lot of white people think right now. And a lot of people don't know where to start. So by you opening your arms to things like this, it allows us to take our first steps in understanding, acknowledging, and taking action.
I really liked what you said too about making it an us thing, not me and you and us and them, because I think the first thing you think as a white person, as a settler, when you hear all this, is you feel guilty and you feel more divided than ever. And I think the best way for us to love each other and move forward and be able to be a community is to feel like there is an opportunity for us to feel like a community, and that it's something that you want as much as I want, you know, and vice versa. So that was a really impactful thing to say. And just, I think, really in a really important headspace for all of us to be in.
I think, you know, I'm making up something here possibly, but empathy in reality, in my mind, is when your hurt becomes my hurt, you know? And I think that's what this needs to be. It can't be Indigenous people are hurting and we are sorry and we want to help
We
them.
are hurting.
We as a country are hurting as a whole. And I think conversations like this hopefully move us a little bit more towards healing. So
away from the division and to us healing together.
Yeah, you bet. This has been awesome for me. Thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much. It was great to sort of meet you, Alan. Hope I get to meet you in LA soon.
Yeah, nice to see you guys on top of everything else. And you know what? We doubled our participants from the time that we started. So I think there are a lot of people who want to participate in these types of conversations, and hopefully we'll do it again soon.
That's great. Thanks guys.
Yeah.
Bye.